try to infiltrate and kick us out of the square and turn a peaceful protest into a violent clash. Actually failed. This attempt actually failed. We are still here. We're still protesting peacefully, and we'll continue to protest peacefully until our demands are met.
So you were there when the gunfire rang out. Can you confirm where the gunfire came from and who it was aimed at?
It was only, all the gunfire we heard came from the Egyptian Museum direction, and that continued to be the only open front. We call them fronts in here in the square. We have so many entry points to the square, and most of them were secured except for that one. And that one is where all the clashes continued all night long, and this is where we heard the gunfires from. Reports. I was in the front line like several times, but I did not personally witness the person with the rifle. The basic idea is that there was one person with the one rifle in the groups trying to scare us out of the square, and he was firing at us. Several persons were injured by the fire, but I think one person was dead. I know that one person is dead. After that, shortly after the fire started, we heard several rounds from other firearms of different types. In fact, I think we heard something that sounded a little bit like a machine gun even. And this was never confirmed. The source of that fire was never confirmed, but we believe that it was the army trying to fire in the air, firing shots in the air, rounds in the air to scare the attackers.
A really tense situation being described there on the phone by Mohammed Abdullah, who spent all night in Tahrir Square watching as the gunfire came in. We have a standoff continuing, as you can see from the live pictures. We can get another perspective now on the phone from Liberation Square with Ala Abdel Fattah. He's a well-known dissident and the brother of Mona Saif, with whom we spoke last night. And we could hear the emotion in your sister's voice as she talked about the threat that was being posed to unarmed civilians in the square. What is going on now?
I actually just left the square. I got really tired after 15 hours of continuous fighting. But when I last left, there's this one front that is still open, and it's a bit confused because we've basically got rid of most of the thugs, but the firearm, we're not really equipped to fight it. And we're not even sure where is the shooter exactly, in what direction, or even how many of them are there. Most of us don't have much experience in dealing with these violent situations, so we can't even tell what kind of weapon it is and so on. But for the rest of the square, it's been secure for hours now, and after the big mob around the bridge and the museum were dispersed, people relaxed in the square. So it's really quite strange where you have this very violent front where 5 people fell dead. And if you walk a few hundred meters to the center of the square, you still find families and children and people trying to keep morale up. While we were fighting with rocks and things were even, the atmosphere was very grim, but the morals were really high. But I must say the gunshots or whatever are really having a very profound impact. Not exactly scaring people, but it's quite shocking, and a lot so the people dying and the people getting hurt, and we had to carry them to the medics, and so there is a very, very strong sense of anger in the square, in the middle of the square. A march, like a protest, going around the square started, and the chant was changed from the people who want to overthrow the regime, or to the people who want to see the murderer or the serial killer Mubarak executed. People are now talking about wanting to see him being held to account and tried for these crimes.
So Allah, you would agree, Allah Abdullah Fattah, excuse me, that the events of last night have changed the mood. The peaceful protests have turned ugly because of the violence.
Yes, I mean, obviously it was violent on, I mean, people did defend themselves against the police on the 25th, the 26th, and, you know, until the Friday, the 28th, when the police collapsed. So this element of violence has always been there. And on the 28th, there were what we think are snipers shooting people, you know, but that was kind of expected. We knew what we were confronting, and it was very much by choice. We had to confront the police state and break the police by, you know, sacrificing our bodies and taking this risk. This is different in the sense that it wasn't even like, you know, with the police, they also try to block your way. They don't want you to go there, or they want you to leave, and then you insist on holding your ground, so they start beating and so on. But these were mobs let loose on us, surrounding us from all directions. It was, you know, very intense, very, I can't even say the point of it was to disperse us from the square because we were completely surrounded. There was no place to retreat. So I can't imagine that they wanted anything except to have a massacre. And I don't think they expected the level of resistance we'd be able to offer and the dedication that we have. But in exchange for each martyr, you get unlimited anger. And so yesterday, I wasn't, you know, privileged enough to be there yesterday, but what I gathered from people, it was a very cheerful event. There was, you know, people were jubilant. They were celebrating this liberated Egypt and their freedom and their newfound power. And they were out and as, you know, families with colors and balloons, and they were running garbage collection and cleaning the place and making it look nice and whatnot. And now it's piles of rock and rubble and burned cars, and it looks like scenes coming from the West Bank or Gaza. But because we succeeded in resisting, I think this means that we continue to be, you know, very determined.
Yeah, that's what I wanted to ask you about. How can you keep up this resistance? Because it's incredible to people who were watching the events of last night as they unfolded, that everyone kept fighting despite that rat-a-tat, that crackle of live machine gun fire that was let loose all around you.
I have no idea. I used to watch these things happen in places like Palestine and wonder, like, you know, from where you get this courage. And I've been, you know, I've been an activist and in confrontations with the police for a few years now, but I still never understood where this comes from. And today I experienced it, and I still don't know where it comes from. I had to pull back elderly men who were insisting on helping in throwing rocks, because we have enough young people. There's no point in someone who is, you know, old to do it. I had to pull back university professors and just tell them, please sit down in the middle of the square. When the first martyr fell by gunshot, it was a bit shocking, and people were discussing, you know, whether we should spread the information or whether it would have a very negative impact on morale. And I heard people saying it's an honor, and I envy him. You know, it is like people really wanted to offer their lives on that day, and I can't. I don't know what comes next, but if we're willing to die for it, then I don't think we can be defeated, and I don't think this is going to stop.
Allah?
Yes. Sorry,
It's okay.
It's been an intense day. It's been a very intense day. I just landed directly on the square in the middle of things, and it's also strange and surreal because most of it is very medieval, with throwing rocks and yeah.
Alaa Abdel Fattah, hold on, you're fine. I want to ask you about those unarmed women and children that you were talking about who are in the square. We're hearing more demonstrators are coming. Do they run the same risk?
Well, the people in the middle of the square were not running much risk because we managed to mount a resistance, an effective resistance very quickly. Not a single regime thug managed to infiltrate our ranks, and so the people in the middle of the square were always protected. But I must say it's really only the very old and the children who did not participate. Girls were equally throwing rocks, and those who didn't were breaking rocks, turning pavement into rocks or rubble or whatever, and transporting it. We had our medics kept moving closer and closer to the front lines. People were delivering food and water. I mean, this was 15 hours, I think, so far of continuous fighting. So, you had to be delivered food and water while you're on the front line. And everyone was participating. So you could be, people who were in the center were very safe. You could almost ignore what was going on if that's what you chose, but almost nobody did. And in the beginning, our numbers swelled when the news came out that we were being attacked. The moment we managed to liberate one entrance to the square, people came to join us and to take over, from those who already got tired and so on.
All right. Alaa Abdel Fattah on the phone from near Liberation Square. Thank you. Alaa describing their mob rule on the streets of Cairo. He was saying that last night was different in the sense that instead of security forces, which they had been expecting, the anti-government demonstrators had been expecting through the days of demonstration, instead of that being their challenge, it was mobs let loose. And that was what we were hearing described in that emotional first-hand account, mob rule. Security forces had allowed these mobs to surround the protesters, and they were not expecting the level of resistance that they encountered from the anti-government protesters. There are still at least hundreds of people in Tahrir or Liberation Square, as you can see from this live picture. Speaking there, Alaa Abdel Fattah, and we spoke earlier to his sister, Mona Saif, when it was still dark. And she was telling us that the activists will stay put for as long as it takes to effect a regime change.
We've lost a lot of people, and we've lost them for a cause. The cause is that we wanted Mubarak to be out. We can't just, we owe it to them to stick it till the end. We have many injured people. It would be very hard to move them. And we know, everyone in the square knows, if we decided to give in now, they will hunt us one by one. We've been through this, we know it. They are shooting, there are people, there are some of the thugs with rifles on the bridge, and they shot at our demonstrators. Like the latest of our dead protesters, he was shot right through the head. I had two friends watching this happen. We are not leaving this place till Mubarak leaves. So there are only two options for the whole world to do. Either they stick to Mubarak and his regime, and you lose thousands of people in this square, and it does not definitely become the